Okay, so I'm going to be watching the live and here. So here I am. I better put on
Okay,
the
we are now live.
Okay.
We're live right now.
Now I'm alive. That's good news. So do you want me to go ahead and get started? All right. Well, welcome to everyone who has already signed in and started watching. My name is France, and just like the country, and I will just give a little background of what I do. So my main thing is I changed my life path actually since the last time I've been to Atlanticron, and now I just teach adults. I just love teaching. I have a huge passion for it, so I teach adults. So my undergraduate degree is in brain and cognitive science with a concentration in neuroscience, and then my master's degree is in adult learning. So, so I love to learn things about the brain and how it works. And I kind of go in the science end of things, but I will also go into kind of the anecdotal stories too. I really believe that science has a lot to catch up on as far as the brain. So I recently did this class, Maximize Your Memory. It's a pretty interactive class, and it's a little bit challenging to do it with a lot of people, which we're expected to have. So I am going to try to make it a tiny bit interactive, but I just won't have time to make it interactive for everybody. And this class is more of a workshop style. It's going to ask you to do exercises, and to be honest, what you put into this is what you get out of it. So if you're just hanging and listening to somebody speak in English and checking it out, that's fine. That's what you're gonna look for. Or if you're really looking at how to exercise your brain and how to just get the most out of it, then you're gonna put that work into it. And some of it's kind of hard. So I'm gonna share my screen here for a moment. Although, Alex, I need you to allow me to share. I can't do it. So you may have to make me a co-host. I don't know if you're able to do that.
You don't have that button with screen share?
I do, and it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, I thought France had a different host login.
You can go up into the
Yes.
okay,
Right
sorry.
now.
Zoom has become, we've all like slowly have become experts of Zoom, but still learn.
I'm still getting there. I was trying to
There
get there
you go.
last night, trying to figure out where to look and how to do it.
Now everything should
Beautiful.
be okay.
Thank you, Alex. Mulțumesc. Oh, I should say bună seara, right? Bună seara?
Right, bună seara.
Bună seara. For me, it's bună dimineața for a few more minutes. When I first learned how, just a side story, when I first learned how to say bună seara, I was saying bună seara, and so the people I was saying it to just did not understand me. So, so again, this is a workshop style class. I just want to mention it being interactive. I do not expect people to remember everything I talk about in the class. So there's actually a course that's been created. It's meant to go over a 6-week period of time, and that's why I wanted to do 3 classes. It was by design to do a class today, a class tomorrow, and then a class on Tuesday for the purposes of, I mean, it's not ideal, but to maximize and to demonstrate the theory of studying, like how you would actually study to learn something, to remember it. So with this it's not a website, it's a course and a learning management system. And so if you want to be able to access this course, what you would need to do is, I believe, either friend me on Facebook if you're on Facebook, or, and this is me, I have a different color hair here, or like my page, but I think you have to friend me. But if you want to like my Facebook page, and it's not very impressive overall, so don't expect a lot, but it's called Learning and Motivation Specialists. And then I created a group on there that's called Maximize Your Memory. And I will add you to that group. So I will remind you at the end. And then if you can screenshot or whatnot for the name so that you can go back in. Learning and Motivation Specialist, or LMN Specialist, is the name of my business. So with Maximize Your Memory, here's the introduction about me. And one of my jobs that I do, by the way, is I teach English as a second language. I do understand that I talk really fast. So if I am speaking way too fast, please let the moderator know, or you can maybe message me in the participant piece. But before we move on, I do want to do this. I want to ask you, when I say the word memory, what does that make you think of? And so if some of you can put your answers in the chat, and then I don't know if Heather can watch the Facebook live feed, but I'll probably just take a few people's feedback or answers on what do you think of when I say memory? What comes to mind? So, and then I'm gonna pull something up on my Facebook page so that you guys can see
Yeah,
it.
I'm filling up my chat. Oh, there's somebody. Okay, so can you see the chat, France?
Can I see
I see somebody
Yes.
said past events and learning, and also somebody said remembering data. That was
Yeah.
Andrea is saying remembering data. Oh, now we're getting a lot. Yay, you're hitting that type
about
of
the brain?
memory, historical information from my experiences. When I hear the word memory, I think about the brain.
Yeah.
And that's from, and Sandra, also encoded data. Aline, when I hear memory, I think about the brain. Constantin, memory, historical information from my past experiences, different data and past learning.
Great. So those are all some great words that go along with memory. So, of course, it deals with the brain as one aspect of it. I'm gonna kind of mention some other aspects of memory, because your body also holds on to memory too, but we just tend to think of those two things as separate. So we'll talk a tiny bit about that probably over the next few classes. And then I like all the feedback because it's all relevant. It's all an aspect of memory. And it's hard if you really try to think about it and encompass everything about memory. It's really hard to encapsulate it into just a nice, succinct description. So there's a reason that I asked you about what comes to mind, because for most people, they do have sort of this universal understanding of when you say, oh, I remember something. We all maybe can't fully grasp how somebody else remembers something. We assume maybe they remember like we do, but that's not necessarily true. We're all unique flowers, we're all different people, so therefore the way that we think and we process information can be different, but with the same components to it. The other thing that I like to tell people, as I mentioned earlier, we've just begun studying the brain. We have a lot to catch up on, and so in the research, in the textbooks, memory models are really still based in this idea that we came from research in the 1950s when we were studying memory, and the way that we studied memory was word lists. Like they just gave people word lists to memorize, and then from there more studies were created and built. But if you think about it, we don't remember in words. Most people don't. We think we do, but when you mention something such as Atlanticron, I don't necessarily think of the word Atlanticron, although it's a unique word, so maybe it does come to mind. But images come to mind, a feeling, maybe an emotion, and then sometimes there's a time sense to it. And that's actually a certain type of memory. There are many different types of memory. But when we talk about memory models, it's rooted kind of in this old way that some scientists kind of came together and said, this is how it is. But this is what we have still today of how we describe memory. So before we want to maximize it, we want to understand it a little bit more. The second thing, and it's funny because as I have all these things going through my mind, I'll be like, oh, wait, what was that? I totally forgot what I was going to say. And then I chuckle because it's just a funny thing. But, is that when you're working on your memory, well, we'll get back to that. I'll get back to that idea. Okay, so what I have on the screen is I just have like a simplified, everything I'm telling you is way simplified. If you know so much more about memory, that's fine. This is what I was going to say, is that years and years and years ago, when we started to utilize computers, because computers have been around for a long time, but when we started to utilize them more and more, we often talked about a computer operating like our mind. And now it's kind of reversed. Now we talk about our brain operating like a computer. Things like I'm just not processing right now. It's not getting in. I don't have the right input. Our brain operates like ones and zeros, which isn't necessarily true. It's just a theory of how the cells, the neurons of the brain operate. So just to keep that in mind, I find that stuff kind of interesting. And at least for English, and I'm sure it's the same if you speak Romanian or a different language, that there are words that you use, but it also shapes how we think about our mind and how it works. And it may not actually work that way. So for a long time, people thought that memory is a stream of information coming into our consciousness, and it's just like a streaming, and maybe it buffers sometimes. But recent research is showing that our senses is more of a pulsating of information, from our vision to our hearing to our feeling sensation. And so we have sort of this filter, and it just comes in bits and pieces, and our brain is really just putting it together to create whatever memories that we need. So just some things to think about. I'm not here to give you all the answers. I'm just here to inform you of what's out there in the research, and then that way you can probably take some of this and be able to do your own research because you might have access to materials that I've never had access to. So going back to memory and the models, so the WM is working memory, STM is short-term memory, and then long-term memory. So working memory is what everybody's using right now. I often talk about if you're sick, if you have other things distracting you, attention is part of that system. So let's say you're listening to me and you're doing your dishes, or you're putting your kids to bed, or you're just getting up in the morning. You're not going to be fully attending to what I'm talking about, and most likely you're not going to remember a lot. So some people will say they don't have a good memory, but it could be more about attention than it is about their memory system. Then it's supposed to stick with your short-term memory to be able to recall it. In more recent years, I've seen it where it's like the super short period of time, but I remember when I went to school, I could be remembering wrong, but it could be over a week or two. But from there, your short-term memory is supposed to go into long-term memory store. And I can't talk and see. Oh, that was you, Heather. So, so short-term memory goes into the long-term memory store, and it goes through the hippocampus. And so there's a cool website. Let me just shoot over to it. I didn't bring it up. Called, if you can access, I guess Google. I'm not sure. I know some people have different internet access, but it's called 3dbrainfacts.org. And it's got all these cool different things, but it does have a 3D image of the brain that will come up here in a minute. And I'm just going to quickly show you where the hippocampus is. It's a like a horseshoe, or not horseshoe, seahorse shaped pattern in the brain, and it's inside, geographically located inside the brain. So it kind of sits right over here. So I can type in here, hippocampus. I don't even have to type in hippocampus. I can just type in hippo. There we go. And and it'll show you right here where the hippocampus is located. The reason I'm showing you this is it's part of a neural pathway with the senses and where things are connected and what connects to what in the different areas of the brain. But the fact that it's geographically or centrally located, it makes it highly susceptible to blood loss when there's an insult to the brain. So if there's a stroke or there's a catastrophic car accident or whatnot, a universal complaint of people with brain injury is short-term memory loss. And the problem is more in the fact that the short-term memories can't make it into the long-term memory. So what somebody had mentioned was encoding. So when you encode information, you also have to store it and then you need to retrieve it. And what your brain wants is to work very efficiently. If you've ever talked to somebody and you know what they're going to say and you kind of fill in their sentence because that's just what we do sometimes. I do that all the time and I have to work to not do that because sometimes it's not very polite. But sometimes if somebody's taking a long time to say something and you already know they're going to say it, you just want it to go quicker. Well, your brain wants that. And so often it does filling in. And if it can predict what's going to happen a few seconds ahead of time, it can actually save some time. And your brain is doing that all the time. Your brain is constantly predicting about 5 to 10 seconds ahead.
That's cool.
Just like you were expecting me to continue with the stream of words. So when I stopped, you kind of probably thought, wait, did my computer freeze? Did her computer freeze? What happened? Oh no, but it was, what'd you say?
I said, somebody hit mute.
Yeah, no, what happened to her? So you were expecting me to continue on. So your brain's trying to move it efficiently, and along with that efficiency, it's going to clean stuff up. So a lot of time people think forgetting is a sign of poor memory, and it's actually a sign of a really good memory because your brain's going to remember those things that are useful. Sometimes they're going to remember not useful things too. So they're still working all that stuff out, but the main belief is that your brain is working towards everything being easier. And that's a good thing, and then that's a bad thing. It's a good thing for neuroplasticity and being able to do more. It's a bad thing though, because it can create some poor habits and then which you have to undo. So the older you are, the more challenging things will be as far as trying to create a good brain health or brain fitness, but it's not impossible. And so I do want to say this, you are never too old or never too young to be working on making your brain fit. And for me, brain fitness also includes your body. It's mind body, in my opinion. It's yes, so it's mind body. I'll get to you. I only see Constancy. It's mind body. That's something I've discovered over the past couple years, where I really am working to internalize that and believe it. In my logical self, I'm kind of like, yes, it's mind body. It makes so much sense. But emotionally, we're so used to parsing it out. So Constancy, I'm looking at your chat. So Constancy said working memory equals RAM. And short-term memory equals SSD. I don't know what SSD stands for because I am not
like an SSD card.
Oh, SSD card, sure. And then long-term memory, yeah, hard stuff. Okay.
The hard drive backup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's in there? And then it's susceptible to damage, right? So you're comparing human, and of course it doesn't translate perfectly, but it's a great way to say it. And then your senses would be the keyboard, the mouse, the microphone, for all those things. And then the display is the information coming back out and the sound. So you can use it as a model. It's a very rough one though. A lot of people like to because we tend to understand it. So, okay, so I'm just gonna quickly go through super speed RAM memory, yes. So I'm just gonna go through some types of memory and to just kind of parse this out. And what I mean by parse, I mean pull it apart and separate it. But the reality is that it all works interchangeably. Nothing works separate of itself. Even anything in your body is working with other parts of your body, even if you're just focusing on it. So when I move my pinky, it is affecting my entire body. I'm just attending to the fact that it's moving here. And we may not realize it. And there's a lot of things that we do and we experience that we don't even realize we experience. Number one, for most of you, I don't know everybody in the room, but is your balance. You don't notice your balance until something's wrong with it, but it's working constantly. And whatever systems are involved with your balance, which I know what those are, but they are in tune to everything. They've got it. They figured it out since I was 1.5 years old. Sometimes things aren't working right. And then that's when I notice my balance is off. It could be through drinking alcohol. For my Romanian friends, definitely Palinka, right? Palinka? Is that the right alcohol? Yep. Okay. And then there's Palinka Light, which is vodka, right? But my balance, definitely, I noticed that, or even sometimes when I'm dancing and I'm not very coordinated. So, but the more I were to do it, the better I would get at it. Not if I were to drink, but to dance, I would get better.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get better at moving. The more I drink, the more anyone drinks, the less their balance is. Okay, so back to memory. So we have this declarative explicit memory. So I often ask American students, I'll say, when I say the word declarative, what are some ideas that you think of? So I don't know if there's some people in the room, so to speak, that have an idea from the word declarative that might bring, I don't know, an idea to them. I don't see anybody.
So are you asking, like, there might be some people who don't know what declarative mean. I'm looking at your
okay.
slide here.
So I'm going to say the word, yes. Okay, I got you, Heather. So that's why I was asking, because a lot of people don't understand what it means in general, American English speakers. So, and it's a little bit topical for Americans. So it is called declarative memory. It's not something I put on that. But declarative, if you're familiar with American history, but we have something called the Declaration of Independence. And so declare means to be able to express it, almost to state it. It doesn't necessarily have to be spoken. It can be something drawn or written, like the Declaration of Independence is a written document, but you're also stating it. I declare I'm a scientist. I declare I'm, happy, or whatever it is. I declare my love for Heather. Like, I'm saying it out loud, I'm expressing it, and there's some power in that. So it's called explicit memory because it can be clear to the person who's experiencing it, and it's also clear to you're expressing it to someone else. There's a listener or a reader or something like that. So there's two types. Of course, again, this is very simplified, and this is based in the research, but there's episodic memory, which there's a word in English called episode, like a TV episode. And that's the type of memory, somebody had kind of mentioned something where it's remembering your history. That's that type of memory. And it is the type of memory that most of us think about when we talk about memory. So when we say, oh, I remember when I learned how to tie my shoes, or I rode a bike, or that you said this yesterday, that's all episodic memory for the most part. And it has a time feeling to it. So if you remember something from when you're little versus remembering something from yesterday, you have sort of this sense of time, and you'll know if it was a while ago or if it was more recent. And so it is this memory is created by the information that your senses pull in, and it's created by, the word's called concatenate, and that's a computer science word, but it's to put all of those ideas, all the sensory information that you are perceiving, that you are actually feeling in some way, and it's putting a memory together. It's not like a videotape, it's putting it together. And so with that, it's highly changeable. So it's a memory that every time you recall it, you change it. So going back to the simplified memory model, there's an idea of you take information in, and then you encode it, you store it, and then you need to retrieve it. So I'll get to your question in just a minute, Gabby. And so episodic memory is changeable every time you recall it. So depending on somebody asking you a question, like they might say, oh, yesterday when that guy yelled at you, like, what did you think and what happened? And you'll think, wait, did he yell at me? Oh yeah, he was yelling at me. You can actually change someone else's memory too. And then, by the way, our confidence in our memory is somewhere else in our brain. So we actually have a mechanism for how confident we are in our memory, and we have our memories that we recall, and they live in two separate areas, and they're not necessarily in sync with each other. So now I have very little confidence in my memory. And in the United States, episodic memory is what we rely on to convict people in crimes. Still, eyewitness testimony is this very strong piece of evidence to convict people, even to send them to the death penalty. So it's kind of a big deal. You can do your own research online and watch videos about people testing the effect of just words you use can change somebody's memory, but how you feel can change the memory every time you recall it. So Gabriela Rapanovich had asked, so what about the deja vu, when we have a feeling that we remember something that actually didn't happen? Nice to see you too. So so deja vu is that sense of you've been through this experience before. So I really have noticed, like, I've paid attention to that sensation, and I've often feel it when I don't get a good night's sleep. And so they don't know what causes that sensation, but I would believe that it's because you're going through an experience that's very similar to a previous experience you've had. So, and it's probably, they're recognizing that our brain has these patterns and they have these pathways. And so maybe it's very similar to a pathway, just like, I know you've been to where I live in my area, and you've been in there in the summertime. So there's parts of the countryside that not necessarily look like Romania because it doesn't have the castles or the beautiful mountains, but we do have a similar landscape. So it might have that familiar feel, but because you're in someplace different, you know it's not a deja vu sensation. So that's my theory on it. That's my France theory. I don't have a lot of research on that. And then just pay attention to when you have that feeling. Recognize if you've eaten something, or if you've had a good night's sleep or not such a great night's sleep, or if you were drinking or you weren't. Just pay attention to what your experience was. That's kind of what I've cued myself to do, because I do experience that quite a bit. So switching over, so we have episodic memory. It has that time feel to it. And by the way, declarative memory goes through the hippocampus. That's part of that neural pathway. So semantic memory is what we call factual memory. So it's usually dates and times. And often, you know, like back in the olden days before pen and paper, you would confirm that information with somebody else. And so then you're sort of relying more on episodic memory. But now that we can write things down or put things in the computer on our phone, we can confirm it that way. But there's no time sense to it. Now, you may have remembered it in a certain situation, but over time, you may just remember the fact. So when I mentioned earlier about how sometimes we remember things that may not be useful, and we just have this random fact of information, that's where it kind of goes. Again, it's an explicit memory. So if somebody asks you a question like, when was your birth date, or you know, when did I'm very bad with historical stuff. when did France come to Romania? And I came 2 times, and it's 2014 and 2015. So, but for a minute there, like a couple years ago, it was hard for me to remember which years that I actually went to Atlanticron. And not that any of you would remember, but some of you may think it was last year, and then others would feel like it was a really long time ago. So it still has that component of episodic memory, and you might have a particular memory of seeing me or even Heather, but there's a factual component. We can actually go back and say, okay, it was this date, and there's no real time sense of when you learned it per se. We're going to jump over to non-declarative memory. So this is the type of memory that we would call skill memory. It's memory that it's harder to explain and to say than it is to just do it. So I'm going to ask Heather to help me demonstrate real quick. So Heather, you are going to need your microphone on, and
Okay,
I don't want you to really do anything other than talk. So I don't want you to move your body. I don't know if you noticed I have a necklace on. And I want you to tell me, no, let me use my bracelet. Tell me how to take this bracelet off without moving your body other than just talking to me.
Let's see. Okay, so you're a little small on my screen, so I definitely see the shiny bracelet. Oh, so there's a clasp on it, right?
No, but that's okay. So, or Heather,
I
is
see.
she?
It just wraps around.
Yeah.
Okay, so without moving my body, you want to take your right hand, grab onto the top of your bracelet.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there, Heather.
Okay.
So, or Heather could just go like this, right? So it's much faster just to show someone than it is to talk them through it. So it's
5 more minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been a fast thing, but it's still just by demonstrating it. So just like getting onto Zoom, it's like just so much easier doing it than somebody trying to write out a list of directions, and you gotta.
Like driving.
Yeah, driving is an example. So again, I parse these two out between physical and cognitive, but I'll be honest, I do believe that they work, not even believe, most of them work together. They work, I want to say in tandem, but that's not the right word because that means side by side, but they work interconnectedly with each other. So physical skills like sports, driving a car, dancing, but those can be also very mental or cognitive. And then cognitive skills are, so we have like reading and writing. This implicit non-declarative skill thing, and this is, I don't think people have really sat down and said, okay, this is the difference, but people who like walking's not considered a skill and talking's not considered a skill. Communication is considered a skill, but not necessarily talking. And the reason those two things aren't considered skills is because skills are things that you learn to do, where walking and talking are something that you will innately, naturally do. If all the conditions are okay, like if your body system is a normal human body as a baby, and then you are allowed to crawl, you are allowed to scoot or whatever, stand up, fall down, and then you'll learn to walk. Same thing with talking. It has these particular conditions. There's a critical period typically, and that people learn to do it. Everything else, though, would be considered a skill, although we have that other side of talent where some people just seem to naturally be able to sing or play music or do a sport. And so those things, last I knew, haven't been figured out as to where they're defined or how they work. So when I'm talking about cognitive skills and skills in general, I'm talking about those skills that you need to learn and remember how to do. And this is where our body memory comes into play. So reading, writing, all of those things. And then also our frontal lobe deals with planning, decision-making, control of impulsivity. It's our filter. So often people with frontal lobe injury, they lose their filter. So they might swear, they might yell at people. It's emotion management, it's attention. So it's these executive functioning, like the boss skills of the brain. And it also has, they believe, a component with memory in there. And so when I say this, I mentioned earlier how the declarative memory, I'm trying to get to the share. And I can't do two things at one time, apparently. I am on the share, duh. Declarative memory goes through neural pathway of the hippocampus, but non-declarative implicit memory does not go through this neural pathway. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you can remember stuff, and most of you will be like, oh yeah, right, that makes sense, even if you don't ever remember practicing it. And so Heather and I used to work together with people with brain injury that had very little short-term memory. They couldn't remember yesterday, they couldn't remember 2 years ago, but they could remember skills. And there's a patient, he's called Patient HM. You can research him. He now has a name because he's passed away. But through studies with him where they accidentally removed his hippocampus, he couldn't form new declarative memories. He was able to change his emotional memory of things, but he couldn't remember things. But he could learn skills. He could learn how to plan, he could learn how to make decisions, he could still do all those things, although it was very impaired, but he could do those things. So I actually saw people with my own eye where they couldn't remember yesterday, they couldn't remember last week, 2 years ago, they couldn't form those new memories, but they could learn skills to be able to live on their own. So we have these type of skills. And this is exciting because it's the area that a lot of people are just starting to tap into now. They're like, how can we expand this? And I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute to tell you that right now, as of 2013, before 2013, they hadn't really even looked at the glial cells, which there's 10 times more glial cells in the brain than there are neurons. And they thought the glial cells were like maintenance cells, and they were just there to do the dirty work of the neurons and to kind of be like the servants to the neurons. And they just started to realize that that may be where memory exists, that it may have to do with a lot of learning, and we know nothing. And it was all based on a scientist in the 1950s who focused on a neuron and said, oh, this is where thinking happens and this is how things operate, and said, oh, those are just maintenance cells. And so and this is why I emphasize that how research shapes how we think, how we as just regular lay people think about the mind and how our brain operates. Therefore, it actually limits us too. So it will limit our abilities to make changes and all that. Nobody does it on purpose. It's not I would hope not any reason that's not a good one, but just by mistake. And so, I mean, glial cells, 2013, what's that, 7 years ago? So we still got a lot of work to do to figure out, especially if it has to do with memory and learning. And they also think, if you're familiar with seizures, that's where maybe where seizures are caused, because they don't really know what happens with seizures. So this is, again, just a very small, brief description of memory to give you a taste and an idea. So the other thing I want to mention is that that I want to emphasize, I want to say it like a million times, to be honest, is that because the exercise or the strategy I'm going to show you next is called the major system. And when I first learned about this, which was only like 1.5 years ago, and I've been, I mean, I'm pretty known for wanting to know as much as I can about the brain and knowing these different things. But it's a mnemonic. So mnemonics are strategies that we use to remember things, and we all have our favorites, whether we're studying information or we're practicing for something or whatever it is. And so this is just another mnemonic, but it is a mnemonic that's used by people who are memory competitors and international memory competitors, and this is the chosen system. So when I first learned about the system, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It seemed so convoluted and confusing and unnecessary. But then I decided to teach a class on it and said, oh, because it sort of fascinated me. And I really learned some new things. I'm always learning new things when I'm teaching classes. And one of them is that if you're doing exercises, if you're trying to make, learning a language, is another skill. And then I'm glad you brought that up because it's related to this major system. When you're working on those memory skills, so let's say you are a dancer or you are a, I don't know what a sport is in Romania, but soccer, football. So when you play football, it's not like you just learn how to kick the ball. That's not the only thing you do to condition your body. And when you're dancing, it's not like you only learn one move. You're actually doing many different things for your body, whether it's weight training, whether it's certain exercises, but you're doing all of these different things and you're changing it up to keep your body in top performance mode. So with your brain, you need to do that too. One way to really exercise your brain is by doing things that are new to you. So with memory, if you want to improve your memory, if that's why you're sitting here with me today, is that even if you think this is the dumbest thing in the world, if you put into it and you really put the work into it, it's like doing an exercise that you're just like, oh gosh, I hate this exercise, it's stupid, I don't see the point, I don't use my right arm, but you actually would. Like, why would a coach or somebody say exercise these things if it's not going to benefit you in some way? And yoga is a great example. Often major sports people are very like, oh, I don't, yoga. But then when they recognize that it actually helps stretch out the system, it helps with the balance, it helps with moving, I want to say the lymph stuff around. And so when I hear people now who say, oh, yoga, I'm too stiff, I'm this, it's like, that's what yoga's made for you so that you can learn to improve your balance, improve your flexibility. That's just as important as all the other conditioning things. So again, somebody had used the word either encode or decode. So there's kind of these 3 steps with the major system. And so when I go through the class as a regular course, I kind of go through the encoding process and then meet back in the next class, but I'm actually going to give you all 3 steps. So that way tomorrow we'll review it again, because the first step is really hard in my opinion. And I would only imagine it's harder for people who aren't English speakers. And I'll explain that why in a minute, why I think that. I don't have a really good reason, but I have a reason. And then so we can come back tomorrow and talk about it, and then we're going to test it on Tuesday. We're going to see how well it worked for you. Within the major PEG system, there's actually 2 memory strategies that's working, and then I'm not really going to talk a lot about the 3rd memory strategy in this class, but it is meditation, and there are access to links in my course. So and the course is free. I haven't posted it in the Facebook page yet, but I'll post the link to this, and you can't get there through this address here. You have to get through this link that I put on there. So, but it's free, and I'm not collecting anybody's email addresses or anything like that. You just click into it and you'll get into what we're seeing. So the first thing is to learn to encode the system. So the reason I think this is hard for non-English speakers is because I could not find, oh, it's not here. Where is it? Sorry. These are all different types of memory encoding systems. I might have to look it up. I checked here. Oh, there's a video on it. And then let me go to the next one. My computer's going a little slow. Sorry about that. Is that there wasn't, oh, here we go. There isn't a translation to a different language, but it is translatable. So you may have to create your own version. This is universal amongst English speakers, so it's not like Heather would take and make her own version. This is considered the system. And so what you're doing, and this is to remember and numbers. So initially, this is just to remember numbers. So if you're somebody who is like, oh my gosh, I finally found the answer to remember a string of 20 numbers and she is speaking to me, then here's your answer. I get that most of us don't have to remember numbers that much anymore. We have, especially phone numbers, but this is just kind of, when you think about with math, what's the very first step you start with? You start with addition, then you learn subtraction. So that's what you're doing. You're learning the very first step. And just by doing this, you will be exercising your mind. You will be working on your memory, I promise. So what you're doing is you are associating a number with a sound. So in English, we obviously have different sounds than other languages. So it makes it a little bit more challenging. And then you may not have certain combinations of words. So you may have to create your own system. If you do speak English, then you've just been, it would be an added challenge almost, like you could do this. So 0 is the s, z, or soft C sound. So soft C is the S sound, s or z. And it to me, I think of the T. You guys have the T with the little squiggly thing at the bottom, the kind of that sound. And so for us, it's sort of easier to, it is easy to remember the zeros there because it starts with a Z. And some of the others aren't as easy to remember. So you do whatever strategy, but it's the sound you're focusing on. So 1 is d, t, 2 is n, 3 is m. So then here's some mnemonics, some ways to remember them. And it takes some time. You actually have to sort of think of it step by step. 4 is So I think there's a slightly different sound in Romanian. It's a little bit more of a rolled R. 5 is l. And then they want you to use the Roman numeral for 50, which that doesn't help me. And then 6 is the j, sh, ch, j, z, and g, j, the soft j sound, which is sort of like just, so it's this. Then 7 is k, or hard C is k, or g, or ch, ch. So this is sh, and this is ch. I misspoke before. K and qu. So it kind of comes, and it's where it's coming from in the face. And so they showed here, like for the K, the capital K contains 2 7s. I sort of see it, I sort of don't. So can work on that. And then 8 is F or V. So I don't know how the letter F looks like the number 8, but okay, I guess in handwriting it does. So it looks like this. Oops, hold on a second. So they're saying that this is like a script F. So I guess it does look like an 8 if I try to make it that way. And then 9 is B and P, or P, B. And by the way, P and B are the exact same mouth movements, just one's a voiced sound and one's an unvoiced. So if you go B, B, you can feel your voice box vibrating, or P, P, there's no vibration. So that's an unvoiced sound. And then you have the vowel sounds, which are unassigned. And so in the course, there's a video that goes over this process. He kind of shows you the chart, but he goes through it on what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to play that for you now for time's sake, but what you do is you'll take a number. So there's a video embedded in here, and I would hope that all of you could get into there. So you would take a number. So does somebody want to give me a number, and we'll do it here? And give me like 5 numbers. Any 5 numbers. Did I lose everybody? All right. Just because I'm really bad with coming up with examples. Okay, so I have, I must have just come through slowly. So I got 19. I'm gonna take, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Stop shared. So I'll do the whiteboard. So, exit, so I've got 19, and then I'm just going to put it as a string of numbers at first. 6, 7, and then 5. Okay. So what they do suggest, and I'm just starting with a smaller number, is they do suggest that you break it up. So that's kind of what you guys did. I'm sorry, I'm clicking buttons and I don't mean to, because it's hard to talk and do this at the same time. Okay, I need to do it more. That's what that means. So they do suggest breaking it apart. So let's do 1967. And then what I would do is go back to my grid. And of course, most of us can just remember, oh, 1967. But let's say this is the first start of a 100 number string. So you would take 1 and you would take 9 and you would create a word. And you would put a vowel in the center of it. So I can say, the first word that comes to mind is dab. So dab is like either to touch something, but the first thought I had was this, which is so cheesy, but is the dab. It's like a move that they did about 5 years ago. Like they'd go like this. I don't know if people can see me. Can people see me? Like where you go like that. But dab is also this. So we have dab.
Everyone can see you dab.
Okay. So we had 1967, so right, it was not 1967, 1967, 5. Okay, so we have dab. Okay, I got to write it down because that's the best memory strategy, by the way. Dab, and then 19, and then 675. So then we have 6, 7, and 5. So then you create a word with that. So something that will go with dab, and the memory strategists say that the sillier it is, the better it is. So, it's hard when it ends in an L. Dab, oof.
What was the last number?
6, 7, and 5.
So 5 is that an I?
It's an L.
Oh, an L.
L, yeah.
Let's see. So L is the Roman numeral for 50. L. So it has to have an L sound?
Yeah, it's more about the sound. You know what?
Whoa.
God, Joel, it's a hard one. So it's hard to create the words at first, but the more you do it, which obviously I haven't done it a lot, the easier it'll be. But so the first thing that came to mind was a non-word, like so I said 6, 7, 5, shoggle, dab, shoggle. So maybe I think of shoggle as some kind of a monster or something like that. It makes no sense, but that's okay. It's okay. The more nonsensical it makes, although it should be memorable, the better it can be. So let's say shoggle is the name of some childhood monster. So I would have, now I know the word now because I've said it 1,600 times, but dab, shoggle. So this is the hard part. So I can just do something like that, but it has the ul sound at the end. So I envision what that looks like. I'll envision a picture of what maybe like a shaggle, like a Muppet, maybe like a, shaggle, oh, that's Fraggle.
That's Fraggle Rock. It's kind of in between the Shaggy and Fraggle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a shaggy Fraggle. So it's a shaggle. So dabbing its face with a Kleenex. So that's silly, right? So now I will have to reverse. I have to decode it to come back to this number. And that's the part that I'm just like, when I first saw this, I go, that's ridiculous, because I can just do other things to remember the numbers 19, 6,
Sure.
7, 5. But so this is really hard to have this image come back to the letters and then come back to the numbers. But that's the point, number one. Number two is that you know how to do this. All of you have done this because that's what reading is. You have a string of letters, you have to place meaning to it, and so that's your writing. And then when you're reading something, you're decoding the symbolism. So if you learn to read Romanian or learn to read your language, and then you had to learn to read English or learn English, same thing. So you're all capable of doing this. The hard part is, what's the point to it? Well, this is the point, is that I mentioned that the memory competitors, the top memory competitors, use this strategy. And so what I'll also put in the Facebook group and tell you here is that, and I don't know if people get Netflix. Do people get Netflix in Romania? I know there's ways for you to get movies, but this is a Netflix original, and it's called The Mind Explained. And also in the course, you can look up this person where she's okay, good, you have Netflix. So The Mind Explained, it's if you have Netflix, so not only you got to get it, you got to subscribe or know somebody who does. There's this person, you can research her too. She is the champion memory person in the world. And this is what she does. She uses this system and she can remember like I don't know, at least 100 numbers, if not more, using this system. Now, that's just the first step, is learning the coding system. And as I said, if you speak a different language, I could not find a Romanian translation for it or another translation. I can only find an English version. Maybe there is another version out there, then use it. But if you have to create your own version, fine. But it's really about the sounds. So maybe your letters are different, but the sounds are the same. And you can do research on her and watch videos on her and just be amazed. So, great, thanks for putting that in there. So yeah, so I think this is a good place to stop, except for I'm going to give you an exercise. So memory practice exercise. So you can try it first, just to get some warm up, is with, did I put some numbers in here? Maybe I want the next one. So this is the whole thing, is associate it with the picture. Oh, let's put in a string of numbers. I think I have it later in the system. Let me get there and then we'll close. I'll ask if you have any questions.
And I had 2 questions. I'm watching the live Facebook too, so when you're ready. May I just ask, the movie, is that the one that was, you had an image of up here?
Well, it wasn't an image. That was the person who was in the movie, who was a memory champion. But it's a short. It's like 20 minutes long, 25 minutes. It's called The Mind Explained. It's a Netflix original.
Yeah.
They have a series called Explained, and then Mind Explained, and it's all different ones. I think it's the first episode, though. Maybe the second one.
Okay. I recall that now. Got it.
So let me just see. I saw 3 numbers in here, so let me just get to that. Here we go. So where it says exercise 3, step 2, exercise 3, and then if you're not going to go into this course, you're not going to go onto Facebook to get this link, is you can just quickly take a picture of this, but 739-07162, and then this last number, I don't need to say it. And again, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. If you try to do this, nobody's gonna have this. If you have this perfected by Tuesday, you should become a memory champion, in my opinion. But it's a skill. It's going to take a long time. And I did do this with a group of people who were basically 60 and older, and there were at least 2 or 3 people out of like 20. There were 2 or 3 people that took this, embraced this, and in 1 week they were able to come back and do this, at least this part of the exercise. And then by the end of the course, there were at least 3 or 4 people who were able to use this strategy and felt more confident about their memory in general. So that's always helpful. All right.
I think the hardest part is remembering the sounds to the numbers.
It is. Yeah, I haven't memorized it.
And then string them along. I have one question that came to us on Facebook from Daniela. She was asking if there's more examples that you have of that declarative memory. I know we were talking about, or the automatic one. So we know we were mentioning like driving.
Oh, non-declarative memory?
Yeah, she was asking, I think, for more examples of the different types maybe of memory to understand.
So for episodic memory, it's the memory of your experiences, and the memory, it's the story of your life. Semantic memory are facts and figures, like Romania is located in Europe and America is located in or United States is located in North of America, and where things are located and whatnot. Where non-declarative implicit memory, they call it skill memory, but procedural memory. So anything that has procedures, how to use a computer, how to build a computer, how to add or subtract, read, write, to do puzzles. So that's often why they tell older people to do crossword puzzles, because then they're working that part. But it's really doing anything new that they're learning. Putting on makeup, cooking, putting your clothes on, brushing your teeth. So those are daily living skills, like things that you would do every day, to things that you maybe have never done before, like jump out of a plane. Maybe some of you have, I haven't. Skiing, underwater diving, like everything that's a doing is a skill memory. Although remember, there's a mind part of it. And here's something to think about too, if you're not sort of buying into the body mind thing, I just read this recently in a book, that it was first your body, then it was your mind as creatures. So if you believe in evolution, it was first the body, then it was the mind. So you have to be in tune to your body, and that's a huge aspect of it. So I pulled it apart to understand it, but it's all together.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I like that because it's that mind-body connection. And I know we just have a minute here, but you're going to be on with us again. Gabriella posted a question, is handwriting better to remember things than writing on a laptop? Maybe we can take that question to the next conference that we have if you want to just let us know when that's going to be.
Oh, it's tomorrow at 8 o'clock, or for me it's at 8. 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
That's right. If everyone goes to the website, they can click on what's my time next to your time, and it will actually tell you what time it will be in your country. So.
Okay. So just to remind you, real quick, my business page, if you like it, it's Learning and Motivation Specialist. There's let me see if I can make it bigger real quick. The picture of me, if you want to friend me, you don't need to feel like you have to. I have blonde hair with braids, so you might be like, she doesn't look the same. And I just can't make it bigger because it's going slow. There we go. It's slowly getting bigger. And then I'll put the link to the course in there because I do have some videos in there, at least one video. I have more information written out if it's easier for you to read it. And then, but we can get connected and you guys can post questions in there too, and I'll answer you to make it more engaging. So
super. Franz, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to be sharing it on Facebook. So for anybody who was not awake or in a different part of the world where they're sleeping, it's midnight, they'll be able to catch it. And so we'll see you at your next class.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody. I'm sorry. I can't see a single face other than
I know. I'm going to work on that. And we're going into, if anybody's on and they want to click on the link to join the next New Horizons conference, we're going to be starting that in just a minute or two.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, friends. See you later. Thank you.